Hello again. Right, so as I just said, I just wrapped up my previous review, James Herbert's The Rats, and I'd said that I read a couple of books the last few days, the second of which was this one, Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin, published in 1967, a classic of the genre. Let me do the preliminaries. There's a cover art, which is fine for this kind of thing. It's the colours, first and foremost, are very fitting. It's the fires of hell, curling up towards the baby's pram. The back here, it says, she is a housewife, young, healthy, blissfully happy. He is an actor, charismatic and ambitious. The spacious, sun-filled apartment on Manhattan's Upper West Side is their dream home, a dream that turns into an unspeakable nightmare. Enter the chilling world of Ira Levin, where terror is as near as your new neighbors and where evil wears the most innocent face of all. And this thing is adorned by praise from all the heavyweights of the publishing industry, everyone from the New York Times to Truman Capote, who calls this a darkly brilliant tale of modern deviltry that induces the reader to believe the unbelievable. I believed it and was altogether enthralled. So was I. This is far from the first time I've read this book, but I hadn't read it for a few years before yesterday. I read this entire thing yesterday, 310 pages, but I read the whole thing in one go because it is, in my opinion, one of the greatest horror novels ever written. Now, I'm assuming that everyone watching this at least knows the story. I'm not going to assume everyone watching this has read the book, because it's one of those books, similar like A Clockwork Orange, where I think the film is actually more famous, more well-known than the novel itself. Now, Polanski's film is a masterpiece, but it is a masterpiece because, well, for many reasons, but the main one is that Polanski's film is a page-by-page, line-by-line adaptation of this book. He changed not one single thing in this. He just filmed from first line to last, and that's why it works. Now, that's not to say Polanski doesn't bring his own visual flair to it and his own imagery. There's a tremendous, amazing scene where Ruth Gordon is eating cake, and, well, they're all eating cake, but she's the reason to watch it. And there's so much in that scene, even though there's barely any dialogue, which says so much. Now, coming back to this book is so clever in how it's told. It's so subtle. The story is, if you're one of the few people in the world who isn't aware, the story involves this young, very naive woman. I guess she's about 25, called Rosemary, and she's in New York now, but she's originally from, I don't remember where it was, somewhere like Ohio or Iowa, something like that, Omaha. And she's presented as, very, very naive, very under the thumb of her older husband. Her husband is this ambitious actor, struggling actor, but who's clearly talented and very, very ambitious, like it said on the back. And they move into an apartment in Manhattan and their neighbors are into witchcraft, it turns out. And Rosemary gets pregnant, and the neighbors, this coven, it turns out it's going to be the son of Satan. In terms of story, it's pretty straightforward, but it's all in the telling. This novel does so much with so few words. My English teacher at school, he once defined poetry as the best use of the least words, and this, I would call this prose poetry in that sense, because there's so much imagery in this, so much evoked in the imagination, and sometimes I would go back and ask myself, how did he do that? I mean, there's a scene where Rosemary calls up this one actor who went blind, and that's why her husband Guy got the part, and she's trying to figure out if Guy paid a visit to this guy and took something of his in order to give it to the witches so they can curse him. And it's like 2 pages of nothing but dialogue, but the tension is immense. And Ira Levin here demonstrates just how much you can do, how much tension you can build only through dialogue. It's absolutely incredible writing, so skillful. And again, Truman Capote, when he is praising you and praising your ability. I should also mention the New York Times quote here, because this is also very relevant. It says, "Suspense is beautifully intertwined with everyday incidents. The delicate line between belief and disbelief is faultlessly drawn." That is so true. This novel is a masterclass in how to Bring the reader right to the edge of disbelief, but always make sure he's on the side of belief, that this is plausible, he's in the world, and he's believing every minute of it. The writing is gorgeous. The writing is absolutely phenomenal. A friend of mine said that there's no reason to read this book if you've seen the film, because it is just a page-by-page, line-by-line adaptation. And I completely disagree with that, and I'm going to give a reason why I disagree with it, about the quality of the writing. Rosemary has been in incredible pain for the last few months, and she's alone, and she's terrified and panicking and all this stuff, and the pain is just unbelievable. She's afraid she's going to lose the baby. And two details I want to mention in this, but let me just read it first. It says, "She had been eating her meat rare, now she ate it nearly raw, broiled only long enough to take away the refrigerator's chill and seal in the juices. The weeks before the holidays and the holiday season itself were dismal. The pain grew worse, grew so grinding that something shut down in Rosemary, some center of resistance and remembered well-being, and she stopped reacting, stopped mentioning pain to Dr. Saperstein, stopped referring to pain even in her thoughts. Until now it had been inside her. Now she was inside it. Pain was the weather around her, was time, was the entire world. Numbed and exhausted, she began to sleep more and to eat more too, more nearly raw meat." I mean, I deliberately read that slowly to kind of savor it, because savor the language. Two things there. The detail of her craving raw meat is so simple, but to me so effective at putting into the reader's mind the idea that whatever is inside her is some kind of beast, some kind of animal. It's difficult because the story is so famous, because I guess most of us have seen the movie, and we all picture Mia Farrow's face on Rosemary, and we know exactly what's going to happen. It's difficult to go back, I suppose, to 1967 when this was first published and not know anything about this story, have no idea about where any of this was going. All we get is the detail that she's craving raw meat. Ira Levin depicts her as eating it like an animal with the blood dripping all down her. But then that detail about the pain, where something inside her shuts down and she even stops questioning the pain. She submits to it. She gives in to whatever it is that's taken over her. In one paragraph, to me, Levin does so much there. I could give many, many more examples. But again, when people say, why spend 6 hours reading the book when you can spend 2 hours watching the film, when they're identical? Now, read the book for the gorgeousness of the writing. Now, characterization, another amazing thing about this. Rosemary, to me, is a rare example of a male writer getting the tone of a female writer right, getting it, in my opinion, spot on. To me, Rosemary Woodhouse is one of the great heroes of horror. How she fights for her child, the bravery of her, because all the time, I mean, the scene where Dr. Hill gives her over, gives her back, unwittingly or not, I'm still not sure, it's ambiguous, but gives her back to the coven, hands her over to Dr. Saperstein. I mean, in the film, that's a very powerful scene, because we see this tiny, emaciated Mia Farrow being led like a lamb to the slaughter to the car. But even in the book, it's even more powerful. It's even more powerful. You feel the vulnerability, the total aloneness of Rosemary, how she is completely without any source of help. And what's happening to her, in my opinion, is the most awful thing that can ever happen to someone. Their child is going to be taken from them and submitted to horrendous corruption. I personally can't think of a more horrifying thing. And all of this takes place within the body of this tiny kind of village girl who is up against power. She's up against very powerful figures. One of the most famous doctors in America is in on it. Her husband now is a big deal in the film industry. This coven of witches and Satanists extends all over the world, and again reaches to some very powerful people. And this slight, tiny, weak, simple girl is all that stands between her child, and that. Amazing. The final sequence after she gives birth is truly horrifying, when She thinks that she's told that the child died, but it hasn't. Yeah, an incredible book. In my opinion, one day I will make a top 10 list of my opinion of the top 10 greatest horror novels ever written. This will certainly be in the running for it. Not only is it a great story, fantastically paced, tremendous atmosphere and characterization, but it's also something that is quite rare in horror. It is very moving to me, very touching. The strength. I'm very drawn to horror which depicts the strength of the mother figure. That's why Friday the 13th is one of my favorite films, even though that's a simple slasher film where this woman is just chopping people up. She's doing it to avenge her son. And yeah, so Rosemary Woodhouse is one of the greatest characters in all of horror fiction. There is a sequel to this book called Son of Rosemary, which I have read. It was published over 30 years later. It was Ira Levin's last published novel. He wasn't a very prolific writer, Levin. He only wrote, I think, 7 novels throughout his entire 40-year career, whatever it was. But yeah, Son of Rosemary, it's an odd one. It's very strange. It's got panned by the reviewers when it came out. I will review it at some point. I don't actually have it here in this apartment. That's why I can't review it here. But I do have it in my house in England. So next time I go to England, I'll pick it up and review that. But anyway, that's to come. For now, do I have anything else to say about this book? I don't think so. Just read it. First and foremost, read it. Because it really is a masterwork. So that's going to do it. Rosemary's Baby, Ira Levin, 1967. One of the great works of the genre. Thank you very much for watching this review and the previous one if you did watch it. And I'll be back soon with another one. So until then, take care of yourselves and bye for now.